Well and howdy, everybody. Welcome back to another Saturday Night Drive-In. We're here to have a good time today watching Superman 1978, the first modern-day superhero movie, I think. The whole origin. First of all, Marlon Brando. He's Marlon Brando, but I think the rumor is he didn't give a shit when he did his performance.
No.
Well, I mean, did you see how he pronounced Krypton?
Krypton.
I'm from Krypton.
He didn't give a shit, and he still gave it.
I know.
It's still awesome.
So he didn't even bother memorizing his lines at this point in his career. And going in, this was my second time watching it within a year, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I didn't notice this on the first time last year, but you can see his eyes moving and scanning a script. Yeah, in his opening scene, you can see his eyes moving, and I'm like, "Oh god!" There's rumors that like other cast members would have like the script like taped to their back, and so as he was like looking around, it was there. But he's great because he's Marlon Brando.
He's Marlon freaking Brando. I mean, and everything about his presentation con, even though, now again, this is hindsight, looking at things that as we've gone on feature. I'm not a fan of the presentation of Krypton.
Really?
No, it looks like Hoth and it's cold and scary. What's up with that?
I know,
it's so weird.
Yeah.
I wasn't huge on how. It's been years since I last saw this movie. I wasn't huge on how they did the outfits for everybody because you could tell it's some sort of metallic material and the lighting and everything was just. It was unsettling to the eyes. I still liked it. It just wasn't something I enjoyed.
I think this is going to be the point where I'm the odd man out. I expected. I have lots of criticisms for this movie as much as I enjoyed it, but none of it was about the beginning Krypton portions. I loved the design. I loved the technology, the crystal aspect, and the glowing suits. I could see what they were going for, especially with the change in color. It was obvious. Like, it wasn't any subtlety, but I could see some thought put into it, and I really enjoyed Krypton's design. Everything with that. The one thing about the design that made me laugh was that baby Kal-El is getting poked by those crystals in that little bassinet thing he's in. He's getting bloody.
Am I the only one that laughed when Krypton blew up? Because it stays on screen for like maybe 2 seconds too long,
maybe,
and then just blows up.
You're evil.
Yeah, no,
it was cheesy.
If you're laughing, it might be just how kind of weirdly violent their deaths are. Like they're falling into lava.
It takes a long time for everybody to die. It does.
Well, that's throughout the entire movie. Like at the end with Lois's death, I was shocked with how brutal that was. So Richard Donner did not want to shy away from how difficult a lot this is, even in the context of a child-friendly superhero cheesy film. And I really appreciate that. I think the moment that bothered me the most, like Dermy saying, is how the sun blows up and then a half second later the planet blows up and the explosions are the exact same time over top of each other. That part was very cheesy. So if that's what you're talking about, Dermy, I get it. Just real quick with Man of Steel, as a comparison.
Okay.
Before I saw this film, I was okay with Man of Steel. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was just, you know what? It's fine. After watching this and seeing the potential,
you understand where it went wrong.
100%.
I hate Man of Steel so much.
I hate Man of Steel now. I really do. Especially with, I've heard about it from the comics, but I've never actually seen it in action, how important it is that John dies from a heart attack and not from a tornado. Because it teaches him a lesson that he forgets later on or goes against later on in the movie. Yeah. And there's consequences for it that no matter how powerful he is, there's a certain point where he's not going to be enough and he needs to learn to accept that, just like every other human being.
You understand there where Man of Steel went wrong in losing the spirit, and it makes me even angry all the time thinking that Henry Cavill could have been a new generation Superman with the smile and the wave. That's what I always say. I just wanted to see him in the red and the blue and the trunks with a smile or a wave or a salute. Every time I see Christopher Reeve do the smile, the wave, I smile. The Krypton part, we talked about that. My only problem is the whole now, why is it galaxies far away? How does he travel? How does he travel between galaxies in 3 years? And to Jed's point, how does the kryptonite meteor rocks follow him?
Well, I'm okay with him getting that far because it's implied faster than light travel.
And it was programmed. He was set course.
Yeah, that was fine. But the kryptonite following him is ridiculous, honestly.
There's a lot of liberties taken with the Lord. But I forgive it because this movie's made with the right intentions. And it follows through because as cheesy it can get, it's that good kind of cheesy where it's not insulting you. It's just it's that era of how it thought it needed to ham up a comic type of thing. I think where
Yeah.
you have Perry White is overly verbal in everything he says.
Oh, I love this version of Perry White.
I'm saying I think the cheesiness is just how at the time how they figured they had to adapt the comic, and that's why I forgive it, because it's just that's the feel of it. And when you put in the work, the character work, it evens out and the scales balance. Well, all right, so we get through the whole origin thing, and let's be honest, this is the first true superhero movie that we get, and I think Richard Donner, I think he wanted to play it safe and realize that everybody knows Superman, but maybe not everybody knows where Superman came from, which is why he went with this very long introduction origin section. And while I am a little bored with the introduction section, once again, the heart is in the right place. It's not as though it's origin for the sake of origin. It's origin because I think he wanted to make sure people understood the key tenets of Superman, and they get it across. You can't save everybody. You have to understand you're different. You have to control yourself. You can't just be the football star. I appreciate it because it's respect. It boils down to respect. Richard Donner was still showing respect to the key important moments that crafts Clark Kent with those American values, those truth, justice, and American way values that allows him to be Superman, to be the big blue Boy Scout.
No, I love it, and I feel like if you show it to a lot of younger kids, they're gonna fall asleep and be like, boring, where's the action? But I think it's something important to learn. I think they went with it so long with the Krypton stuff because Christopher Reeve at the time wasn't a big actor. He became known for Superman, and I just personally love that when, even if it hurts their career, similar to Mark Hamill with Luke Skywalker, you become so iconic with a role that is you forever. So they wanted someone, because this movie, I might be wrong, but this might have been like the most expensive movie at the time ever, but if not, it was close. And so they're like, okay, we need to pump this up. This is huge. We're competing with Star Wars, which kind of came out of nowhere. So we're going to get Marlon Brando, the biggest actor ever. But we're not going to have him play Superman because he's old, fat, and tired. So we need an hour intro of him botching his lines, and that's how we're going to get people in. So I think that's why it's partially so long, is I think it's a production side thing. But I also think that Donner really made it work and made it captivating. If you actually can pay attention to movies that slowly roll out a plan and everything, it builds up excitement. Just stay off your phone and watch it. It builds excitement. And that time where it gets to the point where you're actually seeing Superman and you see him fly for the first time, it's just like, there he is. Thank you. And it's so exciting to see after watching him literally go from an infant baby all the way up to a man. And so I get that it's not going to be for everybody, but I think it made sense in 1978. And I think if you actually take the time to be patient, it pays off wonderfully.
I started watching this actually like before Ballbusters last night because I thought I had plenty of time. And as I'm sitting there watching, it's like, come on, hurry up. Hurry. I want to finish this before I do Ballbusters. Come on. Because I got so enthralled with it. I didn't want to walk away. Even all the slow parts, I loved every second of it. No matter how cheesy it got.
I'm with everyone else on this. The prologue is a little bit long, but there's a justification for it, especially with, as been mentioned in the chat, Superman 1 and 2 were made at the same time.
Yes.
So it would make sense. Similar to the explanation for why the ending of Return of the King is so long is because it's really one film and it's ending all three films simultaneously. So there is a justification for it. I do believe that there are better ways that they could have gone about several things, little ways to clean up the writing and whatnot, but overall, I'd say the prologue, with the exception of Christopher Reeve's performance, is my favorite part of the film because as we get into the other acts, the stuff with Lex Luthor, I have massive issues with. So the prologue, I think, would, even with all those, length, time constraint issues, I think is my favorite part of the film.
So we get to the Antarctic, and we get the Fortress of Solitude. My problem here is I don't like the fact that he went into this 12-year bubble, and he didn't live among the people before we get to the night, because this movie starts in the 1950s and it takes us through the 60s and lands us at the end of the 70s. That means like basically Clark was in a bubble through the entire Vietnam War.
Good for him.
Yeah, I got
it is a problem, especially
There's
with
a
as soon as he gets out, he's just with the Daily Planet. Apparently, has all the credentials necessary, and he's in what's his bucket White's good graces. I think it was important that he be amongst the humans, not being just Kansas. The Kansas upbringing is essential to Superman's story, his traditional values, but his Clark persona needed to be built. That wasn't a thing in Smallville. He wasn't, the hunched over, the dichotomy that Christopher Reeves does so brilliantly.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
But he had to build that in Metropolis, as far as I'm aware. So if you skip the 12 years where he would be doing that, that creates a problem.
And I want to say to anyone that says, oh, how can nobody tell that Clark Kent and Superman aren't the same person? Watch this movie, because Christopher Reeve's performance is just insane. He just slouches a little bit, puts on the glasses, acts all like, whoa, Lois.
And you notice it,
and it works.
You notice it immediately when, after they have date night and he shows up as Clark, when she leaves the room to go get her jacket, just whoop.
I love that moment.
That was good. All right,
incredible.
so
and real world experiments have been done to prove that it could work. I mean, Henry Cavill, during the premiere of Man of Steel, put on a Superman shirt and glasses and walked around Times Square, and no one recognized him. Not a single person.
Man.
It's that old adage. If you walk with a certain level of confidence, and even though you're not supposed to be someplace, it's the aura you project, and people automatically think you belong there. So it's about projecting a certain atmosphere around yourself. And the atmosphere of Clark Kent is, I'm humble, I'm goofy, I'm not confident. You don't really want to look at me too closely, because, frankly, you don't want to look at somebody who's that meek, even though they're that tall. You don't want that. And then he takes off the glasses, and it's really Superman. Let's talk about, we're now. He has gotten out from training. He's now in Metropolis, new city Metropolis, and he is Clark Kent, and we haven't even seen Superman yet. Christopher Reeve's performance is now he is here. We got 2 hours left of the movie, and we get what is, and I will agree with this. People say this all the time. It is the definitive Clark Kent Superman.
Yeah.
Because it's got all the right characteristics. Christopher Reeve, and we know this for a fact, he put everything into this. He wanted this to be perfect because he believed in the character.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Adam, like you said, every time Superman talks, you just smile, and it's almost like bittersweet, because, like I said, this is so missing from modern movies, is this sense of hope and optimism and like just positivity, and that's what Superman represents. I love Batman. Batman's my favorite thing ever, but if everyone is Batman, then Batman isn't Batman. You need that polar opposite, and that's what this Superman embodies. This is the best Superman. He is so freaking good in this, and everything. Like, I think one of the best scenes is the scene where they get robbed. Him and Lois get robbed, and there's so much under the surface of that being like, well, he knows has to act like, oh, Lois, give him your purse and all that stuff, but it's like, he's got this. He knows.
He still gets in front of her, though. It's Clark. He still stands in front of her.
Exactly. He gets in front of her to protect her, but then he's still acting meek. So if the guy does shoot, he's got this. But it's just, there's so many different layers. Every little beat in that scene perfectly shows to me how good Christopher Reeve is as Clark and Superman, because he's both back and forth ping-ponging between them.
Jed, this was your first experience. You've heard it a lot in our circles about the Christopher Reeve Superman. Watching it now for yourself in all its original glory, the first outing of it. How do you really feel now after seeing all that? And how do you feel about him? And
it's Christopher Reeves himself that makes this film a classic, a superhero film that people watch for years to come, and made the genre, I think, so viable, the superhero genre so viable. It's his performance, because it's perfect. I have lots of criticism of this film, and there's not even a single moment where I can criticize Christopher Reeves. From the simple moments as Superman, he saves Lois Lane from the helicopter, and then he spends the rest of the night just helping people in simple situations like the cat or big over-the-top ones.
And you notice every time he does something, going all the way to the when what is supposed to be the Hoover Dam breaks. Or I think it's the Hoover Dam. What the dam? We'll just go to the dam. The dam breaks. After he saves everybody, the first thing he says is everybody okay? Batman needs help. In every instance where there are others there, it's always what's Superman. He's not just thinking about himself or even the person around him. It's always, I'm Superman. I'm making sure everybody is okay.
It is nice to have Superman go from person to person to person, just helping out. Even if it kind of bites him in the butt and weird stuff happens there towards the end, but he still just tries to help everybody. No matter what, he just is going around saving the day. He's stopping the dam. He's fixing all this shit that's gone wrong because the weird plan that Lex Luthor had. That don't like Lex Luthor in this at all, by the way.
It's a breath of fresh air. And I'm Jed, as someone who saw this for the first time this week. In everything we've seen, it has to have really been literally a breath of fresh air for you to watch a superhero, one of the most 3 iconic superheroes in modern nerd history, after Batman and Spider-Man, to have him seen portrayed with just the pure positive nature. It must have just been, wow. Why can't we have this anymore?
Oh, absolutely. It's very refreshing, as you said, because our society and entertainment in specific is so obsessed with nihilism these days. And that's one reason I love Star Trek so much, because it's a sci-fi future where it's just fundamentally positive. And it's so rare that I have to embrace it. Just like Doctor Who, one quote that I bring up from Doctor Who all the time is from the second episode of Christopher Eccleston's run, End of the World, when he's talking to Rose. They're looking at Earth about to be destroyed, and it's 5 billion years in the future. And he says, human beings, you're so obsessed with death and think that you're not going to make it, that, beef global warming or asteroids is going to destroy you. But you never consider the impossible, that you make it, that you survive. And that mentality, which I think is shared with this film, is so rare that it makes you want to smile. It gives you hope for more than just the story. And that's the purest form of escapism, I think. None of us are putting ourselves over Clark. None of us are relating to the character in the way that modern people do. We don't see ourselves in Clark necessarily, and we're not thinking about our everyday lives. So it is escapism, but it gives us hope for our everyday lives. That might be a little too over the top and corny, but I mean, it fits with this cheesy film.
That's what Superman's supposed to do, though. He's supposed to inspire hope and realize there's good out there. And even though he's not, maybe there isn't really Superman's going to save the day, we can all have a bit of that positivity and do that little thing to help somebody out. He's supposed to represent the best of us, even though he's not one of us. All right, we brought it up. Let's move on to I like Gene Hackman. I love Gene Hackman. Fantastic actor. Hackman. Every performance, no matter what it is, Hackman puts out an outstanding performance every single time. And his performance is great.
His motivations are fine enough. It's
That's
more
clear.
his plan that I have an issue with. Because like you said, with LexCorp, he's clearly a very wealthy man to the point that he's buying up a bunch of property in Arizona and whatnot. But he's not wealthy enough to have anyone else besides himself and his 2 friends go hack the
Where's Mercy?
The U.S. government does not just randomly drive down the road with nuclear bombs and 2 cars.
Here's the thing.
And his plan depended upon them doing that.
And these were nuclear missiles. So if a nuclear missile hit the San Andreas fault line, everything's irradiated. And when he went back in time, when he rotates the Earth, the missile still hit.
Yeah, everything else still happens, but her car's still in the exact same spot.
The fault line
so the avalanche should still happen.
Are we yelling about the time travel now?
We're not there. We'll get there. I'm saving it.
We'll get there.
Okay. We'll get there.
But all his property would be worthless because it's irradiated.
It's irradiated. At least
a lot of it.
That section where it hit would be. They don't mention the fact that was a nuclear missile.
And why did he send a missile to New Jersey?
No, they didn't send it.
That was an accident.
That was an accident. That was because of Otis. Otis set in the wrong coordinates.
That's almost worse.
Yes, and that's why I say, why is Otis there?
No. What I mean is worse is her mom's living there, and that's why she betrays Lex. So Otis's mistake saves Superman and saves the world, or saves California.
But it leads to that great scene where he checks his watch, and it's just like, but my mom lives there, and he's like, It's like, no, she doesn't. She did.
That was a great performance. I loved how he did that. Yeah,
that's Hackman, and Hackman sells it. Even though, and I in the chat I see it, I do not like this version of Lex Luthor. He's
an idiot.
I like his attitude, his overconfidence. I like the fact that he sets a great trap for Superman. That's great. But when you dig deeper, we think over a second, his leap of logic and calling it kryptonite and that it's going to be a weakness. I don't know where does it come together that a piece of a meteor, a piece of Krypton irradiated would weaken him.
And how did it get there in 3 years across galaxies? I can get Clark getting there in 3 years across galaxies.
Well, it was thousands ish, maybe.
But
Marlon Brando's like thousands.
That contradicts what Lex said. He specifically said Krypton blew up in 1943.
Oh, damn it, Lex. Stop pointing in plot holes.
Yeah, I know. Come on.
I'm Team Brando. It was thousands of years.
That's a little rough. And
even thousands of years is not enough to go across multiple galaxies.
Yeah, and galaxies. That's my biggest problem with that. Galaxies.
If it was 3 years, you'd be lucky for it to have blown up in our solar system.
Hackman in his performance makes it fun, which is why we're forgiving, because it's, even though it's not a full version of Lex Luthor that I like, it's still Lex Luthor. And it's just not all the way in there.
Final thoughts is, as much as I love the movie, it's super freaking cheesy, but cheesy in a good way, that you're not like turning it off. You want to indulge in all this like super camp levels of fun.
I love this movie. I highly recommend everybody should see this film. I think younger generations should see this film to get patience and understand what good storytelling is, what good structure is, what good music is, good acting, good everything. I think a lot of us nowadays are going through superhero fatigue, especially with Marvel. And this film is a breath of fresh air watching it nowadays. And it's just like, this is what superhero movies are supposed to be, with the quintessential superhero. Everything in this film will leave you happy and smiling, and it might even get you reconnected with a little bit of your hope and a little bit of your faith and everything. So I cannot recommend this movie enough, and it doesn't matter what you're into. This to me is the essential Superman media, period. So I love it.
I'm with a lot of you when it comes to this film. There's so much to enjoy about it, and subjectively, I did love my experience with this film. There are some substantial flaws that I do see. I am definitely the one here, I believe, I like the more artsy types of films, like Last Night in Soho and Tar have been two of my favorite movies from the last couple of years. So this definitely isn't the type of film that would work for me as well as it does for some of you guys. But it's incredibly fun, and the hopeful spirit of it is essential for a Superman film. So it easily makes it the best Superman film that I've ever seen. But those flaws are just too blaring for me to really get immersed in the film, especially the Lex Luthor stuff and the time travel stuff. Those two things are enough to really bring down my score a lot once we get there.
I echo most of what you guys all said. I have problems with the time travel. I have problems with Lex Luthor. I have problems with, in my opinion, as it says, laziness of just calling New York City Metropolis, even though we know Metropolis isn't New York City. New York City exists in the DC universe. Other things, little things, nerdy stuff that I've already mentioned, pick apart. But in the end, this movie still respects Superman. As James said, it brings you the hope, that wonderful, fuzzy, warm feeling that we get when we look at Superman saving the day. It's there. Christopher Reeve nails it in every way, shape, or form as both Superman and Clark Kent. You believe it, you feel it. He wants to be there. He wants you to enjoy it. You know it. The rest of the cast does an outstanding performance. It's the acting performances that save this for me. This is a must-watch movie so you can appreciate what respect looks like when it comes to doing superhero films and respecting the source material. Even though they bend it a little bit, he's still Superman. He's still Superman, and we give you that salute and that wave and that smile, and that's all we need to feel comfortable and warm, alongside a soundtrack, a score, a theme that is just iconic and memorable.